Assalamualaikum and good day to Honorable Professor Dr. Hairuddin bin Muhammad Ali and to all my respected fellow teachers. It is our pleasure from Group 2 to share the discovery of the last topic to be covered in Theories of Educational Leadership and Management. Today, we are going to present the cultural model of organizational management and the aligned style of leadership model, which is moral leadership model, ethical leadership model, and altruistic leadership model, which are stresses in the values, belief, and ethics of leaders in the organization. Before we start, allow me to introduce the members of Group 2. I am Nazi binti Muhammad Noor. Accompanied with me is Cikgu Nur Izzah binti Jufri, Cikgu Nur Hafizah binti Noman, Cikgu Irna Ardiana binti Jumat, and Cikgu Ummu Aima binti Murtaza. The content of our presentation today will cover the finding on features and limitation of cultural model, moral leadership model, ethical leadership model, and altruistic leadership model. Our objectives are: number 1, to explain central features, goals, structure, environment, and limitation of cultural models. Number 2, to explain central features and limitation of moral leadership model, ethical leadership model, and altruistic leadership model. And last but not least, number 3, to discuss the potential application of each models in Malaysian school. So now, in the first part of cultural models, I am going to explain the definition, features, goals, and the structure of cultural models. While school from the outside looks similar, functioning in a similar fashion and providing similar services, they are in fact extremely diverse in terms of student population, size, resources, demography, geographical location, employee diversity, governance, culture, and other factors. In a sense, leadership and management are often considered as practical activities. Establishing the vision, articulating the goals, allocating the resources, and evaluating the efficacy, they all involve action. The sixth model of educational management is the culture model. According to Gamsi 2018, in culture model, some concepts such as ideas, belief, norms, values, attitudes, symbols, rituals, traditions, and ideologies are considered as central to organization, and the members behave and assess the behavior of other members based on them. Muraru 2017 refer cultural models rely on values and norms of the people in the school institution. These models do not manifest themselves by formal structure but by symbols which become shared tradition. In simple words, belief, values, and ideology are at the heart of organization. The most relevant leadership style to be aligned with cultural models of educational management is moral leadership, which stresses in the values, beliefs, and ethics of leaders in the organization. As cited by Bush 2010, some other terms has also been used by scholars to define moral or value-based leadership, including ethical leadership, altruistic leadership, authentic leadership, and spiritual leadership. So now, in the first part of cultural models, I am going to explain the definition. Now, we look at the central features of cultural models. Number 1, it focuses on the values, belief, and backgrounds of individuals or members of organization which are shared within the organizational system. Number 2, organizational culture emphasizes the development of shared traditions, norms, and meanings. Number 3, emphasize on informal aspect of the organization. Number 4, there might be more than one culture, especially in large organizations. And number 5, these values underpin the behavior and attitudes of individuals within school and college, but they may not always be explicit. Now, we look at the central features of cultural models. Number 1, it focuses on the values, beliefs. Now, let's take a look on goals of cultural models. Cultural management takes into account some values in the moment of setting a goal and planning, and also the level of how goals are to be determined. The decision on cultural management is not just about the values, but also a rationale which is important, taking into consideration the community we live. The belief and tradition are really important in every aspect as well as the collective opinion. Moreover, it focuses on how understanding and viewpoints of members are integrated into common organizational meanings. Cultural models also outline desired goals for relationship with other people, focuses on cultural differences, actively change the situations to make them consistent with their personal goals, and prioritize their own personal concern over those of their relationships. Now, let's take a look at the structure of cultural model. The leader's responsibility is to generate culture, to communicate values at both school and community level. Most of scholarly literature on the social component of education focuses on the school organizational culture. Organizational culture is considered as an important factor which can be used for better understanding of the way of life and work in educational institutions. Scholars started to acknowledge significance of organizational culture more seriously during 80s. They concluded that there is certain force which has a strong influence on relationship within organization. Investigating of organizational culture in school contributed to development of many advantages regarding practice of educational institution. Also, it helped in solving the problem on promotion of school environment. Therefore, the center of organizational culture is pattern of unconscious thinking which can be observed by behavior of each member of organization. In this way, organization provides order, facilitate living within it. Also, culture of organization can be used for predicting of its reaction to internal and external environment. For school culture, the view of Peterson 2009 provides some clarity. They describe the core elements of school culture as a shared sense of purpose and visions, norms, values, belief and assumption, rituals, traditions and ceremonies, history and stories, people and relationship, and architecture artifacts and symbols. Culture defined in this way overlaps considerably with context and the leadership characteristics and practices. Educational institutions are not only diverse in terms of geographical location, size, policies, governance and objective, but also consist of a large number of individuals in the form of teachers, students, parents, and leaders, which bring in their own individual culture to add immensely to the mix of its context. The organizational culture of educational institution is affected by the interaction between these people. The effectiveness of its leaders, faculty, teaching and learning activities, belief and practices of the members of the institution, working environment, and the collegiality among people are few of the elementary factors shaping the organizational culture of institution. Thus, people in educational institutions become the central elements of institutional culture. For next, Ms. Nur Hafiza shall continue on environment, limitation, and application of cultural management in Malaysian school.
Okay, let's go. This leader may be able to use a moral approach and focus on things that can affect people, although it is not the same on the terms of understanding. In this way, leaders may be able to gain widespread support for the new rules created. Head teachers or principals tend to get support for an innovation. Appreciation of organizational culture is an important element in school leadership and management. This cultural model emphasizes values and belief, emphasizing subjective theory. Okay, now focus to limitation of formal model. This culture model has no specific limitations. This is because the culture in that particular school is created by the headmaster or the principal himself. Focus on moral leadership that emphasize on the values, belief and ethics of leaders in the organization. Cultural model reinforce aspects of human management rather than the structural elements. Those values are important and need to be nurtured. The cultural model also focus on organizational action and dimensions that are largely absent from subjective perspective. Now focus drawbacks in cultural model. The cultural model has three significant drawbacks. First, there may be a dilemma, wrong, or discrepancy in ethics because cultural leadership can be considered as applying or inserting cultural elements on other members of the organization. The search for a monoculture may mean subordinating the values and beliefs of some participants to those of leaders or the dominant groups. Second, too mechanistic, with the assumption that leaders can define organizational culture. As we have seen, secondary school and college may have several subculture operating in department and other section. This is not necessarily dysfunctional because successful subunits are vital components of thriving institutions. Third, the focus of cultural model on symbols such as ritual and ceremonies may mean that the organizational elements are underestimated. The symbol may mispresent the reality of the school or college, refer to innovation without change. School may go through the appearance of change, but the reality continues as before. Last slide for me, potential application on Malaysian school. Cultural model is suitable to apply in Malaysian school because the country practice cultural values in the organization to achieve their targets. The success of an organization depends on the way of the management and the culture created by the school leaders. The following are the findings of some previous studies as an evidence to prove that this model is suitable to be conducted in Malaysia. Okay, for example, sports. The sports education in goals is to analyze and understand sport through pedagogical perspective and effective methodologies. Mustafa and Saleh, 2019. PIBG or PTA, success of school and PTA consensus that makes home visit of students who have problems of frequent absenteeism, illness, and being stuck in social symptoms. Et al. 2019. And raising the flag. Singing songs and flag during official gathering at school has become a culture practiced by most schools in Malaysia. Refer to Pekeliling Exercise 9 November 2018 for school unity activities in Malaysia. Okay, that's all from me. Continue with my friend's teacher Emma. Thank you.
Thank you to Sister Hafiza. Assalamualaikum and a very good morning to our respected lecturer, Professor Dr. Hairuddin bin Muhammad Ali, and to all my fellow friends. Now, I will present about moral leadership. According to Cheng et al., moral leadership is defined as a leader's behavior that demonstrates superior virtues, self-discipline, and unselfishness. Let us look at another definition of moral leadership. According to West John, leadership is defined as leadership behavior which is consistent with personal and organizational values which are in turn derived from a coherent ethical system. It entails setting an example for another about the rightness or wrongness of particular actions. The moral leadership emphasizes integrity, selflessness, altruism, and never taking advantage of others. Now, let us move on to the moral leadership characteristic. The first one is integrity. The characteristic of integrity is defined as one's ability to be honest, fair, and accept the consequences of all actions, which fall under a person's responsibility regardless who committed the action. Integrity is a difficult characteristic to maintain but easy to identify. Leaders who embrace integrity as a valued characteristic admit fault when their subordinates make mistakes and give credit to their subordinates when they succeed. Next is selfless service. Selfless service consists of acts that are committed for the betterment of society without regards to self. Such selfless acts are generally not put on public display, so they are difficult to recognize. A leader who practices true selfless service is prompted by his subordinates as an individual who should be followed. The leader is talked about in a positive manner and referred to as a hard worker who will do anything for anybody. Next is decision making. A strong leader of moral character is able to make decisions and accept the consequences of those decisions. Too often, a leader makes decisions but is quick to find fault in others when the consequences of his decision result in a negative outcome. Correlating to integrity, decision-making requires that a leader look at all situations honestly and with an unbiased point of view when making decisions involving people. A leader of moral character is just and consistent when considering what actions must be taken. This is especially true when considering disciplinary actions. Next is personal values. A leader of moral character has personal values that she will not compromise. These are simple things that make the person who she is today. A good leader presents these values to others through her daily interactions and holds true to these values in all situations, not just when she is in front of an audience. Personal values, which can consist of relationship, commitment to parenthood, or education, vary according to the individual. Now, let us move on to the moral leadership model. The moral leadership model was developed by Dr. Peter Guy Nordhaus. It comprised of 5 leadership characteristics. The first one is creating organizational culture. Next is fairness to all their subordinates. Then, trustworthy, power sharing, and people orientation. Now, let us look into the limitations of the moral leadership leaders. According to Abdullah Abdurrahman, 1998, there were cases reported regarding integrity and accountability of principles. The second point is justice. The same cases should be treated the same regardless of their race, gender, religion, class of origin, and natural talent. Next is humility. The principals should give freedom to their subordinates and not being selfish to achieve his own goal. Lastly, there were principals who don't have compassion and mercy and take advantage of others. Now, let us look on how the moral leadership implemented in Malaysian schools. Every principal has their own personality, style, and approach to accomplish the school's specific vision and goals that is in line with the national philosophy of education. The moral leadership plays an important role in shaping the organization, not only in terms of its image but also in terms of its values. According to Lithwood et al., the only form of leadership which is most likely to be successful is transformational and moral leadership, because it entails not only a change in the purposes and resources of those involved in the leader-follower relationship, but an elevation of both, which is a change for the better. It ultimately becomes moral in that it raises the level of human conduct and ethical aspiration of both leaders and led, and thus has transforming effect on both. In short, the Malaysian school principals and Malaysian school leaders is instructional leadership which is transformational in nature and entrenched with moral values. The second point is application of moral leadership in TS25. The schools of universities need moral leadership more than other kinds of business because it is where the values of future leaders are formed. The moral values of its administrators and teachers are an integral part of the learning process of students. Last but not least, let us move on to the last point. In several parts of the Malaysia Education Blueprint 2013 to 2025, one can find several statements that rightly give importance of values education related to the spiritual and moral development of students in Malaysian school. Thus, the moral leadership plays an important role to fulfill the aspiration of the blueprint towards the education system and also towards the students, as well as in one of the 11 main shifts of the blueprint to transform the national education system. A general aim of the blueprint is to produce Malaysian citizens who internalize values and specifically to strengthen values education, thus ensuring the spiritual and moral development of Malaysian students. That's all from me. Thank you for watching and listening.
Thank you to my colleague, Umul Emma. First of all, let me wish everyone a very good morning, especially to our lecturer, Professor Dr. Hairuddin Muhammad Ali, and of course my fellow friends. I am Irna Harjana binti Jumat. Will continue the presentation on the topic of ethical leadership model. Ethical leadership model can best be defined as the demonstration of normatively appropriate conduct through personal actions and interpersonal relationships, and the promotion of such conduct to followers through two-way communication, reinforcement, and decision-making. Brown, 2005. The 5 central features or principles of ethical leadership was first presented by Aristotle. The importance of these principles have been discussed in a variety of disciplines, including biomedical ethics, business ethics, counseling psychology, and leadership education. Number 1. Respect others. Leaders who respect others also allows them to be themselves. They approach others with a sense of unconditional worth and value individual differences. Respect means that a leader listens closely to their subordinates, is empathic and tolerant to opposing views. When a leader exhibits respect, subordinates feel competent about their work. 2. Serve others. Help others pursue their own interests and goals. Leader is the servant, or you can say a steward, of the vision within the organization. Leaders believe idea behind service is contributing to the greater good of others. 3. Show justice. Justice demands that leaders place the issue of justice at the center of their decision making. Everyone should be treated the same or fairly. Good leaders are those who never have favorites and those who make a point of playing everyone in the team. 4. Manifest honesty. It is more than just telling the truth. It also means being open with others, representing reality as fully and completely as possible. It is important for leaders to be authentic but sensitive to the attitude and feelings of others. 5. Build community. Leadership is often defined as the process of influencing others to reach a common goal. Authentic transformation means that a leader cannot impose their will on others. They need to search for goals that are compatible with everyone. Despite the positive elements ethical leadership can provide to an organization, it arguably can cause issues as well. This is what we call limitation. Ethical leadership requires the leader's ethical framework to fall in line with the vision of the organization. But it is not just the leader and the organization that need to be aligned. The subordinates can find it difficult working in an environment with certain ethical standards. We should be aware by now that ethical behavior depends on the person's worldview, and therefore, ethical behavior of an organization might not be considered ethical by another person. The different ethical frameworks can cause tension within an organization, and therefore, certain people might not find the environment pleasant or welcoming. Furthermore, ethical leadership can be rather dependent on the leader's ability to influence. In a way, ethical leadership has charismatic leadership tendencies, which means people might be following the leader without a critical approach. This can mean that employees trust the leader so much they forget about the leader's humanity, meaning they are blind to any mistakes or problems. For an organization, a blue-eyed approach to following the leader can be devastating in terms of making the right decisions. Ethics are difficult, and upholding high ethical standards at all times can be extremely complicated. The so-called gray areas are more than likely to arise and cause issues. The problem for organization is upholding ethics while trying to maintain a positive bottom line. With ethical leadership, organizations are going to have to pay more attention to policies. Clarity is paramount for the leadership model, and this can mean the need for clear and coherent policies, rules, and regulations. The more detailed the policies, the easier it is to guarantee proper ethical standards are upheld. But this can mean plenty of extra work, especially at start. The rigorous clarity and consistency could be challenging, especially for smaller organizations. Finally, as alluded above, the requirements for consistency could act as a drawback. Ethical leadership can be difficult to maintain, but if you step out of the framework once, you can damage the respect earned with your subordinates and other stakeholders. Claiming to To be an ethical leader and not acting in an ethical manner could be worse than following another framework but implementing ethical behaviors occasionally. Application in Malaysian schools. Ethical leadership surely can be applied to individuals at all levels of organization and in all walks of life because leadership has a moral dimension. Being a leader demands awareness on our part of the way our ethics defines our leadership. Managers and leaders can use information on ethics to understand themselves and strengthen their own leadership. Leaders can use ethical principles as benchmarks for their own behavior. And that wraps up my presentation. Thank you for your kind attention.
Assalamualaikum and a very good morning to our beloved professor and dear friend. My name is Nurul Izzah binti Jufri and I will explain about altruistic leadership model. There are three main parts in my presentation. Introduction of altruistic leadership model, key features and the limitation of altruistic leadership model. What is altruistic leadership? The word altruism means unselfish behavior intended to give benefit to others, while altruistic leadership is defined as the leaders guiding the others with the goal of improving their well-being or emotional state. Who invented altruistic leadership? Altruism was invented by the French philosopher Auguste Comte. He intended the word altruistic is an opposite of egoism. In other words, altruism means selflessness or unselfishness. In practice, it refers to caring about the happiness of other people. This can provide a high quality of life and work. When altruism is combined with leadership, that means the leader's focus is reaching the common objectives while leading in a selfless way, where the happiness of the employees is the main goal. The key features of altruistic leadership. The basic principles of the altruistic leadership style are: first, empathy. Empathy is the ability to understand and feel what another person is experiencing, while one's ability to step into the shoes of others. An empathic manager has a good feel for their employees. Without empathy, no effective team can be built. Second, kindness. A kind leader is a friendly or a kind leader. Such a leader loves to give praises and encouragement, but did not focus on the negatives and does not criticize their employees. Instead, he gives ideas for improvement. Third, good listening skills. A leader should be a good listener and be able to stimulate communication within the team or on the job. A good atmosphere for communication is very important. Being a better listener helps with retaining employees and keeping morale high. Last one, selflessness. Good leaders are selfless. They facilitate the success of others, take care of the well-being of others, and ensure that common objectives are reached, while keeping circumstances optimal. They don't expect anything in return for these good deeds. Good leadership makes others feel valued. Next, the application of altruistic leadership in Malaysian school. Among examples of the application of this leadership in Malaysian schools are program Sekolah Penyayang or Caring School Program. These various activities are designed to create bond between all the school members. For example, Safe School Activity, Happy School Campus, Online Safety, Reading Corner, and many more. These implement positive values among students, teachers, and unity among school members. While the program Ziarah Cakna or Care Visit Program, expanding the concept of a caring school and strengthening the relationship between the school and parents and guardians through the practice of teacher visits to students' home. These empathy gestures show love and care towards needy students and their family. Altruistic leadership has its limitation too. You may neglect your own needs and desires. You may get exploited by false friends. Many people actually are not act selflessly. Burnout, mental illness. Unclear if true altruism even exists. People may get lazy. It may also lead to financial problems. All this could happen if leaders are practicing altruistic leadership too much. Last but not least, should we practice altruistic leadership? Well, altruism is quite an interesting concept, and there are also many advantages and disadvantages related to it. In my opinion, we should all act in an altruistic manner so that we can achieve higher level of respect and empathy in our society. At the same time, you should still put yourself first from time to time in order to avoid getting exploited by the others. That's all my presentation for today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Cikgu Nurliza. We have completed the presentation of cultural models and aligned leadership style. The references used in the study are shown on the screen. Therefore, we shall end our presentation for today. Thank you and Assalamualaikum.